Hello, welcome to today's episode of The BIM Student. I'm your host Chetna Chauhan. Home building, the simplest and the most complicated project in the world. Simple because it does not have complex requirements, area programs, design, or structure. Complex because it's not just a building. It's a place most people take pride in and are attached personally to. If you are in a business of home construction or any trade that deals with home construction, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Today, I'm talking to someone who comes from one of the largest home building companies in North America, Mattamy Homes. And not only that, they are revolutionizing the home building sector by leveraging BIM and design technology to optimize their home production process. My today's guest is Derek Cheung. Derek runs Building Information Management program at Mattamy Homes Canada, along with various technology-centric and innovation-related projects. He's also board of director at CanBIM and comes with a background in engineering, procurement, and construction management. He also held a senior management role in a distribution logistic firm in Far East. Let's listen to what Derek has to share about BIM and home building industry in Canada. Welcome to the podcast, Derek. I'm so glad you took out time and you wanted to chat about Mattamy Homes and low-rise construction and low-rise residential on our podcast. Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely. It's the pleasure is all mine to be here, and I look forward to chatting with you. And maybe everybody will find it a little bit insightful, because I know low-rise residential isn't usually a heavy topic within BIM.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I would like you to introduce yourself and a little bit about Mattamy Homes. What do you guys do? What is your role? What are we up to? And we'll get into further conversation. But all those who don't know you, I don't think if somebody's living under the rock, they might not know about Mattamy Homes, but mostly
in Canada, anyways, in Canada.
Okay, let's say in Canada, but let's go through a brief introduction.
Sure. So my name is Derek Cheung. I am the manager of BIM and Strategic Sourcing at Mattamy Homes Canada. I've been at Mattamy for 3 years, and I actually entered Mattamy post MBA out of Ivy Business School, and I entered as a leadership development associate. So I got a great opportunity to rotate through various different departments at the company, mostly downstream of the design process, so architecture, construction, purchasing. Our founder, Peter Gilligan, started building. The story goes that he started building his own home first, and then a couple of neighbors came by and really loved it and asked him to build practically exactly the same home that he had built for himself. And then, after the first or second home and very happy customers from that, he realized that there was an actual business to be had here. And fast forward 40 some odd years, and here we are as one of the, I believe we are the largest private home builder in all of North America. That's a little bit about the company.
Okay, and you know what? I think I did tell you earlier, I am myself who's had first-hand experience with buying a home from Mattamy, and I would say that quality-wise, interaction-wise, my family's experience has been extremely fulfilling. So congratulations on that and building a company that makes people like us happy.
Our sales and marketing staff and the heads of our communications team will be very happy to hear about that. I'll make sure to reflect that to them.
Sure. Today's discussion is really focused on low-rise and BIM in low-rise, and how is Mattamy leveraging BIM and design technology to make their services and their product better. Let's jump right into it. How did this whole journey, or how did this thing start that, we should implement BIM at Mattamy, or, this is something cool and we should try and take advantage of it?
So for this, I'll have to hop into a little bit of story time with Derek. And this part of it is, some of it is historical, so it's before my time, so it's based on just general sentiments or stories that I've collected from working with various individuals. But As far as I understand, this was perhaps mid 2010s at some point in there, and the setting is a internal leadership conference at Mattamy. This obviously, unfortunately, is something that we haven't held in a little while, from what I understand, because of the pandemic. But it's usually a yearly conference where all the senior management of different divisions and also our CCO division, which is not a division, it's our Canadian central office. We gather together, talk about what we can do, what's the latest trends, like essentially a SWOT analysis type thing. And I think where we got to with the leadership discussion that particular day in mid 2010s was on aligning CAD standards. So that discussion went on a little bit, and then my now boss, the VP of architecture, essentially stepped in and said, well, okay, this is great conversation. And yes, of course, it would be great for us to align standards and make sure that we're all operating from the same spot. But perhaps we should start talking about using or leveraging newer technologies nowadays. There's stuff out there called BIM, where instead of drawing lines on a 2D environment like AutoCAD, you're actually incorporating detailed data into a 3D model that can help you iron out a whole bunch of construction issues or design issues long before you get to site. And I think that conversation caught the ear of our founder Peter Gilligan, who was at the conference, and essentially he said, okay, sounds great, you propose it, run with it. And so that was probably a few years before I joined the company. But on a more personal side of the journey, when I joined the company, this was back in 2018, the first thing that I was looking for, because I showed up at the purchasing department, this was me taking some background knowledge in from my days as in an engineering consulting firm. And so I asked for something that I thought would be pretty simple. I asked, do we have any takeoffs that we've generated or we've loaded out? And people are like, what do you mean loaded out? I was like, well, like extracted from the 3D model, like CSV files, the usual. Mm-hmm. And people just looked at me like I was an alien. And so that was the point when I realized that, okay, this business is very different, as I sort of prefaced in our introduction. Low-rise home building, because we do stick building, there's a much higher tolerance. So I started digging into it. Well, okay, my past life looked like this. My current life looks like this. Maybe there's a bridge in between this, because some of the stuff that we used to do that I got very used to it's not rocket science. It's stuff that has, we called it smart 3D, I think the terminology, but I was just more of a user. I was never an implementer or designer from that sense. I would use the outputs of the 3D model. I would do a stress analysis in a 3D software, and then a lot of marking isometric drawings and stuff like that. But that world, I think the technology, especially since I was doing that about 10 years ago, and I think I'm dating myself here, but over that past decade, I've seen technology become more sophisticated. We have more of these tools more widely available. So I decided to dig deeper into it. Can we start doing this in the low-rise world? And maybe we can. And that's when I got introduced, or at least brought in front of my now boss, the VP of architecture, who was spearheading this initiative at Mattamy. And so as I got looped into it, I became deeper and deeper involved. And, lo and behold, here I am.
Okay, that is a good story. Can you a little bit get into the process of at what stage would you say your BIM implementation starts? What's your process?
Okay. So our usage of BIM is model specific, I suppose. So for each particular model, so and those models are based on the lot sizes. So we base on the width of the lot to call out the lot size. So if it's a 30 foot lot, the model range could be 30A to a 30E or something, depending on how many models we have in our community. So we would design a BIM model that applies to each of those individual designs or those models. Of those models, and this is a little bit of an explanation of how low-rise home building works and how our designs work, is that each of those models have what we call elevations, which essentially is a different exterior look with the same essential structure on the inside. These are these, and also another thing called what we call in Mattamy PPOs, which are actually, I think we have a new terminology to call it ACOs, which is architectural choice options, which is probably
I know that option.
Yes.
I know that option.
Yeah, so those ones are the ones where we give the homeowners the original base plan, and then we say, well, this is how the base kitchen looks like. But if you want a chef's kitchen that's more open concept, that has a larger island so you can entertain on it, this is how the design will look look like. So we essentially provide a certain level of customization. And this is, I guess, the happy medium story. What we used to do at Mattamy a long time ago was we took in individual requests. So if a homeowner came in and said, oh, well, I really like this particular plan, but you know what? I think you can take this wall down and you can do this with this area, and that will give us a 3-bedroom, but it'll give us this giant family room on the second floor. I'm making this up, right? But then we'll basically have a special wishes department within Mattamy to try to make this happen. And it's great for our customers. It's great for it's great for refining the design into the home that you want. But ultimately, at Mattamy, we are production, so we need to gain those production efficiencies as well. So therefore, we have this process of pre-designing some of these upgrades or changes in designs that we think homeowners might want before we market them out. So I think that's an important piece to note, because if you look at any other building that we bring into BIM, typically a high-rise apartment, a hospital, an oil and gas plant,
office building,
right? Whatever it might be, your selection choices of your exterior will. You'll predefine your exteriors of what material it's going to be. Is it going to be are you using a specific type of siding? Are you using brick? Are you, that kind of stuff, it gets built into a spec. Right? And then you just run off of that spec and off you go. On the interior, you know where your walls are, let's say it's an apartment building or a condo building. You know exactly that unit will have the bathroom wall here, and that unit is going to be this size, right? At the very least, there's that. It's very rare that you'll change walls with an apartment building. But with how we operate with both elevations and PTOs, those are variable until we sell. So this is a very important distinction, because we need to use existing technology that may not be necessarily built on the premise that you could switch all of these things, because I think original BIM modeling, whether it's Revit, whether it's any of those softwares, a lot of times they're designed for one project at each stage, and it shows, because when you talk to some of these companies on their billing structure, they bill on a per project basis, and so when you look at it from that way, and you try to apply this to the low-rise world, well, that one project is only one model within a full suite of model ranges. So that's one, existing, I guess, limitation to using current technology and applying it to the low-rise world, which is why I preface that as well, that low-rise isn't something that you normally think of in a BIM scale. And the second part to this interesting mix is that we don't know, we can design all of these things out, but we don't know what actually ends up getting picked until a homeowner buys the house, because we have to allow them to that process to do their designs and to make up their decisions and so on and so forth, which is unlike pretty much any part of the built world of using BIM, because normally the decisions are made and then, all right, let's go, let's charge forwards and let's manage construction and so on and so forth. But once they buy, they still have some time to change their minds and make decisions and maybe add, because of course we want our customers to be happy, and that leads up all the way into sometimes closing in on the construction start date, which means that there's variable information that we need to manage going into this construction. So that's one piece of the challenge that I think a lot of other processes wouldn't have to manage, but for us, it becomes mission critical. And yeah, in a way, it sounds difficult and sounds, and it is, right? It's not something that's easily manageable, but at the same time, it also sort of energizes me to see that this is actually a challenge. This is something that we do really want to do. So yeah, we've invested a lot of our time working with our BIM consultant. They're named BIM Studio, who's been very good with getting us off the ground, because this is a completely new process that no existing tool pretty much is ready for us to roll into this world. So we're here where we are right now, and we're basically designing this. The analogy that I like to say sometimes is we're trying to build the plane while we're flying, because there's certain pieces of it that is very simple to get off the ground and can get us to a certain level. But once we get there, there's other pieces of the puzzle that we need to sort out in order for us to continue moving. And so it's there's never a day that is the same when we're trying to work on this. And it's both a little bit frightening, but also very, very rewarding when you get it right.
Oh, yeah. So I have a quick question. So what part of model are you right now of your BIM model are you really able to leverage? So it's just the geometry or some part of data and scheduling too?
No scheduling as yet, although that's something that we're interested at looking into. Simply because the model level that we're modeling at, which is if you compare, well, you can basically think of each model as an individual suite of a building, right? So when you do a schedule, you usually do it for the full building, which means that for us, we would have to model the whole site, including groundworks and all that kind of stuff, which we're not quite there yet, although that is very distinctly a future possibility and something that I'm very, very interested to look into with our land group. But our focus right now so far has been on the architectural and downstream side from there. So the way we put this together is we design a model off of the design architect's original design. And right now we've tried a bunch of different collaboration methods, because that's something else that isn't there's no guidebook to exactly how that works. So in some cases we've initiated with our architect to do start to finish BIM with us. In some cases we've cut off the design architect's responsibilities at post-design or final design level, and then anything that is a working drawing and beyond, we take it up with our BIM consultant and another downstream architect to do stamping for construction purposes and so on and so forth. And so those are the pieces that we're building towards right now. And the models, we're using them, the data that we're extracting from them. Let's start with that. Is we build the model, we use it to do clash coordination. So we include wood framing structure, we include the floors, HVAC, plumbing to the best of our capabilities. And I would say that's one of our latest projects, and that's something else that has been building up too. So in some of our original designs, the first project that we did, it was only the wood frame floors, the walls and floors that we incorporated. Then we added HVAC. And then we sat down with our plumbers to understand how the plumbing side of it worked, and then incorporated that piece in there, the designs as well. Because another tidbit of low-rise residential is that plumbing, as far as the building code is concerned, for permitting purposes, does not need a drawing to be submitted, whereas HVAC. So in that specific case, we will easily be able to get HVAC drawings, but there was no standardized plumbing drawing for us to model off of. So that's why, just a little bit of a preface as to why we needed to dive in and figure out how the plumbing actually worked. So a lot of these fun things were developed over, I would say, heavily developed over the past 2 years, which, as you know, I think 18 of those months or so have been under the situation of the pandemic, which has been, it's caused some difficulties, but I think it also caused some acceleration, because everybody was relegated to using digital means of communications. We were able to kick off a lot of our divisions that were not local to us, so namely our Ottawa division and our Alberta division, to start looking into using this technology as well. So as of right now, we've engaged every single division in all of Canada to look into using BIM, and we have active projects with every one of them.
Okay, I have a feedback on that. So considering you've just taken this journey just 2-3 years ago, where you are at is phenomenal, because sometimes it just takes a year or so for companies to figure out their BIM standards, the challenges that we face when we are adopting the technology. So I think it's really great. And I actually, when you're talking about BIM Studio, I did once attend a seminar that they gave at CanBIM, and I was intrigued. And ever since then, I was like, man, I really need to know their process. Like they did outline that process really well in that class. But it was amazing to see that, if it's trickling down to this level, we are really hopeful where technology will take us, and you've just started your journey. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be you are already pioneers in home building and in low-rise building sector. I think you're already pioneer in using technology, and there is way to go.
And I appreciate the sense, and I think I can't take too much of the credit. I'll take a little bit of it, but it has a lot to do with our company's comfort with innovation. So allowing some of these, what I sometimes half jokingly call crazy ideas to flourish or to play out, and for me to take charge and keep running with it, takes a lot of trust from our senior management, and I'm just happy to say that able to get that, which I think a lot of people may not necessarily appreciate, but I certainly do. And number two, we have good partners. We have both internally and externally. So externally, obviously, with BIM Studio, with our architect Q4, but internally we have very, very receptive, I'll just say, divisional operators. So our operations teams like innovation in general, and perhaps this is something that's been hammered into part of our culture. Peter would always come up with something cool and new to try out, and they're used to absorbing that and trying it out and testing it out. So there's a lot of good things sort of stacked on for us to make this successful. And I guess I'm just very thankful for all those positive levers that I can pull.
Okay, before we move into the next section, I have one quick. I know we've been discussing this, but when you started on this journey for in BIM implementation, what did you actually expect, and where you say, for example, you said, oh, we could do these things, but 2.5-3 years down the line, or I would say some 4 or 5 years down the line, is there a clash between expectation and reality, or you're pretty much on the timeline of your expectation?
So I think there is a little, there is a little bit. As far as the technology goes, I think it's going as expected. So, and from that angle, I can only really compare or have this level set against my previous experience in the engineering consulting world of how we use 3D systems. And even then there were some holes, like we would do 3D design, and then as I mentioned right at the start, I would end up with a stack of drawings, and I would have to mark out the calculations and have that submitted, because that's something that's probably in a way similar to where we are at now, because those particular drawings need to be reported, and they also need to be engineer stamped. In the world, even right now, right, things are changing, and even in Canada, there's a lot of pushes for municipalities or I guess the top tier level in the government to start accepting more digital formats of submissions. But until that happens, your 3D model will still have to be printed out into a 2D readable piece of paper in order for you to officially stamp it and submit it for your project to basically progress. And so that's one part of the limitation that it's sort of an expected limitation as we go forwards. And so developing the technology to get around it is something that was always necessary, and is something that we're doing right now. But I guess the challenge that I wasn't necessarily expecting is trying to get these into a production environment. So I know I just prefaced how great it was, and it's still true. Our internal teams are with accepting innovation. However, what is key at Mattamy, and I think that's at every single company, is especially for any production-based operation, right? We need to build homes because we're Mattamy Homes. Our homeowners are depending on us to deliver their, the home they've paid for and that is the home of their dreams, hopefully. So we have to keep production going. Now, BIM, this is another part that I can chalk up, and maybe in a later section we'll talk about some frustrations as well. A piece of the reality that I truly didn't expect is that delivering the work is one thing, but also how do you manage the individual features of what you deliver and how do you grow it so that there's a continual level, not just of acceptance, but of buy-in over time, right? Because we want our teams to ultimately, I guess I operate as an internal consultant almost to bring BIM to the table. And I want our clients, our individual production teams, to start adopting this and go, amazing, this is exactly what I've always wanted and always needed, and for them to buy into it and evangelize it over time. And that was what I was expecting, and the reality turns out that it's not as easy to get that buy-in as I had expected.
Okay, there are millions of other questions I can ask you right now, but I'm going to ask you three impossible questions. This is the time for our impossible questionnaire. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, okay, just as a side note, this questionnaire is prepared with an intent that guests cannot answer it. So we're really, really, really challenging that. If you answer them, you're a genius.
All right. Well, I would never claim to be one of those, but let's see where I sit on the scale, and you can tell me how I fared compared to all your other guests later too.
Yeah, and my bad, it's not three, it's two questions. I don't want to harass you too much here. But let's start with our first question. In a lock set, this is the safest lock recommended for main entry doors. So I'm going to give you four options. You have to tell me that which one is the safest for main entry. Mortise, unit lock set, cylinder lock set, rim lock set.
Well, I won't lie to you. I don't have any idea what those lock sets individually mean, so I can really only guess at this one. I'm gonna go with cylinder because that's the one that I've heard of before, but I have no idea whether this is correct or not.
And that is wrong because Mortise lock set.
Okay.
So now because you work with Mattamy procurement team, also you can tell them that the safest lock set that you can use for main entry doors is a Mortise lock set.
I'm making a note right now.
Also, okay, so the next question is, and this you might know because you have an engineering background, but why do civil engineers not screw the walls, the side of the walls on the ground, like the both sides of the walls? Why don't they screw both the sides on the ground?
Why don't civil engineers screw bolts into
Okay, I'm going to repeat. Yeah. Why civil engineers do not screw the sides of the walls on both sides with the ground?
I'm trying to think about this one because we're the wall might mean a little bit of a different thing in my low-rise world, and also I'm just picturing a pad usually with a column on it, and there's usually four studs with bolts on each corner, or we use Hilti bolts. So this one I don't know either because I don't know what the context is that this would actually happen. I always thought that it's an even screw in for wherever you put in your structural pads and stuff like that. So
okay, so basically if you screw them on both ends, it would cause deformation of walls and beams and it will break them. So with like the expansion and contraction, right, it could cause all those if it's not tensile enough. I'm getting back to it could result into some failure of that wall.
I see. Okay, yeah, I think the picture that I had in my head for the question that you were asking me was different from the actual intent of what you're asking me of. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so we're towards the end of our podcast. What are your rose, bud, and thorn of adopting BIM technologies in Mattamy?
Yeah, I think I already sort of mentioned these 2 points, but the rosebud, I would say, is our teams, because just working with individual stakeholders within the organization of, you know, who we can launch these particular outputs to and how they can consume them. Just seeing that level of enthusiasm, and not necessarily even whether they buy in or not, almost isn't the point. But I've, like, so far, whether they know what it is that I'm trying to do, I've always found teams internally to be extremely supportive, and I think that's credit to how our company, that our hiring practices, the people working at Mattamy, all that great stuff. And like, there's a deep level of expertise and knowledge. And as I told you, I only have 3 years of experience working in home building at all, and I think over these 3 years I've learned so much, and I was able to accelerate my knowledge about this industry, chiefly due to how much people within Mattamy want to share that knowledge. And so kudos to our team for being receptive to innovation, to being just great people all around. And that's something that I think brings me back to, well, not just wanting to launch BIM, but wanting to come into work every single day, is that I'm working with very great people all the way through. The thorn, which I also did sort of mention, is BIM itself. So part of it is the technology that we use, and I mentioned this earlier, right? Like, BIM technology was never sort of developed to be applied directly to low-rise home building, at least from what I see. So I sort of see in the future that we're going to look at other maybe plugins or any, like, some sort of tack-on solutions to maybe make our work more efficient. Another, I guess this one is back to another rosebud, is that I've hired a data scientist on our team who's looking deeply at our data right now, at the existing data, but also at forming a pipeline to absorb BIM data going forward. So there's some pretty exciting initiatives that are coming down the line. But so BIM itself, number one, is the technology, but also the fact that no one can agree on what BIM means, and that's been frustrating, right? So as an owner, specifically, at Mattamy, where we're not technology-centric, let's just say, right? We're operations-centric. We're all about the product. We're all about our customers. We're all about delivering the best homeownership experience. So when it comes to, we want to do BIM, and we try to rally the troops and get everybody to do BIM, it's hard to explain what BIM is, and that's the main trouble. You explain it to an architect. One architect might take it different from another architect, and you explain it to a consultant. The civil consultant might think of it a different use of it than a structural consultant, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, for every organization and for every person, really, even, BIM can mean something different. And I think it's usually geared towards, number one, that person's own understanding or biases towards what this means, but also if it's organizational based, you're going to use this technology to the best of what it delivers for your organization, right? So if we go to a civil engineer, they might not, and not that we need it, but for them, they're probably going to be modeling out the grading levels, but they won't really care about, how do you put in the concrete here, or whether you have to have a pad here or not. They're not going to model it out because it's not part of their purview, so to speak. And that's something that has been a bit of a frustration, because mainly because you can't use a generalized term saying that, all right, let's do BIM, and then everybody is aligned. There's a lot of internal discussion, external discussions, in order to get every team and everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. And here's another thing, because people change, perhaps your consultants might change over time, or you move on to a different project in a different area, and construction being, especially low-rise home building, being such a localized business, the people that you deal with will change, almost guaranteed, project to project. So every explanation that you've done previously is now no longer useful, because while you have some existing materials that you've discussed before, sort of laid out in front of you, you have to redo that again. And I think that's part of the challenge that is more than just what I or Mattamy can do to overcome it. It has to be our whole industry coming together.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that I would challenge the whole industry to standardize some things. And it also comes down to BIM consultants like us, like BIM-wise, like BIM Studio, that we kind of have also a duty towards trying to educate industry at a larger scale, that this is what it is, and this has to be our end goal. And that's why I named this podcast the BIM Student, because we're all still learning this process. We're still learning. We still are not sure of the outcome of the process at each stage. We're all, and it varies with projects, with project types. Like even two homes are not same, two schools are not same, two office buildings are not same, the clients are not same. So it's the whole dynamics of the industry. I would say it might be a thorn for now, but it's also a bud, because it's creating a lot of opportunity for future.
That is true. That's certainly very true. And as this is just a statistic that I've been reading in the past couple of years, is that the more diverse the perspectives are, usually the more growth and more success that you end up getting. It's just aligning those and trying to put that together that might sometimes be difficult. So yeah, I do look forward to seeing how these collaborations end up coming together. And I do see that piece of the silver lining. I wouldn't go full out to call it a rosebud, but perhaps it's something that hasn't quite well, I guess that's what a rosebud is, right? It hasn't quite blossomed, but I do see the opportunity for that to happen.
Okay, thank you so much, Derek. It has been such a great discussion with you, and I'm looking forward to more nice, beautiful homes from Mattamy, and hopefully BIM is a driver behind it for what we want most here in Canada, which is good housing, affordable housing. So thank you so much for what you guys are doing, and thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and it was great talking to you about this.